Gang, today we're going to take a look at the new amp from Third Power. It is the Dirty Sync 6 VEL. That VEL stands for Valve Experimenting Like. I'm sure that's not it. I don't know what it is. Third Power always puts out products that have a little twist. They're always pushing the boundaries, like what can be done. The Dirty Sync is no exception to this. So I'm going to walk you through some of the controls, because if you just take a look at the panel, you may say to yourself, what? I think the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think of it as a single channel amp, roughly 30 watts, and it's a Valve experimental platform for you. It will take any power amp tube that you could fit in it, which is all the big boys, you know, the 6L6s, 6V6s, the L34s, and you throw your favorite preamp tubes in there, and you're off to the races, because there's more that this allows you to do to unlock all of the potential from your favorite tubes. This is the tube lover's dream amp. Let's get in a little closer. Going from left to right, we've got our gain, volume, treble, middle, bass, and we're gonna jump over this one for a minute. And we've got our presence. Totally straightforward. Of course you know what all this is. Now, preamp bias. This is an incredibly important control for the amp. It goes from cold 1 and 2 to warm 1 and 2. To my ear, it takes you from, at cold 1, the most dry and tight sound, and then varying degrees up to warm 2, which is sort of the warmest, if you allow me to define it with what it is, the warmest and sort of juiciest, maybe roundest sound, with that sort of really forgiving-y, like, ooh, this is a little easier to play kind of feeling. This switch gives you 2 tone stack tonalities, from the JTM, which is more an squishy, airy sound, to the JMP, which has that sort of like real punchy, solid foundational tone. Back at the gain section, there's Plexi mode, which is sort of the baseline for the amp, and you can switch it to gain Cascade, which gives you more gain. It gives you sort of a squishier sound, a little more juice on the top. Then you have a gain boost, which is foot switchable, which unlocks more potential. Let's dig a little deeper into the foot switch. All the way to the far left, it's the signal mute. This is a full system mute, which is nice because sometimes if you just step on a tuner, you might have things after the tuner that are quite noisy. This will shut all of that down. Totally off. Next over is the plus gain switch. Without it, you're here. That really functions like a second channel. I know you don't have independent EQ, but it's a one-channel amp, but it really makes the functionality like a two-channel amp. Moving over, you've got your effects loop control, 2 buffered effects loop. Right now I'm running a Keeley Halo through that. Dry. Lastly is the solo boost and foot switch bus. The solo boost has a level control on the rear of the amp, and that is like this. Again, super convenient for performances. Now there's this foot switch bus. That is assignable here. There's 2 extra switches above the plus gain and effects loop. Now you can assign either of these switches to be also controlled by the single switch. So if you're going from your crunch, and then you want to jump to higher gain and your delay and a lead boost, you'll get all of those at once coming from. That would eliminate like 90% of the tap dancing you'd have to do in a performance. The Dirty Sync 6VL has a clean sound. But that's not really where it lives, and if you set it up clean, you kind of lose a little access to what is so awesome about it. So let's just go straight in and get some more dirty stuff. This is one of those amps where you could set all of the tone controls between 5 and 6 or like 1 o'clock. Everything is going to sound good. But let's take a look at the gain range here. We're in the Plexi mode. Things escalated pretty quickly. So let's just pull that back. So that's a nice dynamic tone with a little rollback of the volume knob. You could work on a cleaner side. I should mention the amp currently has EL34s in it, and I am in cold 2 setting. Now if we go to cold 1, I'm going to cycle you through these, and you'll hear as you go to a colder bias, the sound is going to sort of move away from the speaker. I think it does get a little quieter. It's also going to get tighter, firmer, and a little more, I hear it as dry along the top end. Here is cold 1. Now, when you just switch from cold to warm, you might think like, why would you ever leave warm too? It's so big and juicy and fat. Well, the cold settings, if you compensate for them, they have an extra like clank to them that's quite nice. It's not something you would change on the fly in the middle of a gig. I think you need a little too many adjustments, but like in the opening track, I was changing settings for what I needed in the studio. It's awesome. Let's jump over to JMP mode. It's just overall more just punchy. You lose a little of that sort of open sweetness, but what you gain is that like Jakey Lee chunk chunk sort of thing. If there wasn't enough gain for you in Plexi mode, you can go over to Cascade mode. Let's switch to cold 2. I feel like when you start to get into the really higher gain zones, the slightly colder bias is preferred for me. Oh, let's start at Plexi. There's something about this amp that is really listenable. I feel like some amps overwhelm you with humongous bottom end and this abrasive top end. To me, the 6VEL always has a very listenable mid-range, and it sits in this really musical zone. So no matter how sort of aggressive you dial it in, it's still like, yeah, it's aggressive and it sounds like powerful, but it's still really listenable and like palatable. There you go. There's my commentary for the day. We have arrived to the foot switchable gain boost, the plus gain mode. Of course, you could just switch it from the front panel, which, man, we're just going like Mondo gain zone here. There, I couldn't resist switching to cold 1 to tighten everything up a little bit, give it a little more treble and presence just to get like massive. Massive. So I'm going to drop in some 6L6s into this head. You have to rebias the amp when you swap power tubes, but let's take a listen to see what this sounds like. Now we'll go back to the stock EL34s. Feel-wise, when I'm playing, the 6L6s felt smoother. I feel like I noticed a more broad mid-range across the 6L6s, while the EL34s had a little more cutting upper mids in there. But your mileage may vary because this head is all about the tubes. You know, put in your tubes, vintage tubes, new tubes, different kinds of tubes, and you're gonna get a different vibe. Speaking of different vibe, let's drop in some AT7 preamp tubes. This is gonna give a much lower gain than the 12AX7s. It's going to change the overall gain sweet spot of the amp and give it a more vintage character really overall. So I'll pull out a tally and give a go on that as well. So that is the Dirty Sync 6 VEL from Third Power Amplification. If you want to know more about it or their other products, they have a website, if you can believe that. They have a full website with tons of information on this head. It's awesome, so check it out. Thank you, gang, for watching, and we will see you next time.